Hey there, it's Stephen Hughes again here on the YouTube channel. As you can tell, this is obviously a pretty big change of form. Normally we're on Zoom doing a recording with our one-on-one interviews, but try to do something different here. So you're going to have to bear with me, not with him, but with me in terms of trying this new format, and I'm hoping we'll get better and better at it. So instead of doing the whole, I'll have my guests completely introduce themselves, I actually will say my guest today is Chris Battrick with Lindquist Mortuaries. But I am going to go ahead and have Chris tell us what he does for Lindquist, because he is very articulate. He is the bearer of many languages. Like that might come up, I don't know. I think he's going to, again, say what he does much better than I can. So go ahead, Chris. Tell us what you do with Lindquist.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with you today. As a licensed funeral service professional, there's a variety of things that I do, and it's an interesting career. So I'm just going to assume people watching this may not know anything about funeral service and kind of walk you through the basics. So if it has anything to do with final care, that means when we pass away, whether it's documenting your final care wishes or making decisions and doing what we term advanced planning, or whether it's actually taking care of somebody that has passed away and seeing to their final wishes being met, and a variety of things thereafter, I do it. I'm an insurance licensed funeral service professional, so I have clients that want to meet with me because they want to document their wishes for their families, for their children. They want the peace of mind of knowing that their wishes are known and will be honored, and even sometimes want to pre-fund that, and that's its own conversation. And then there are people who pass away, and then I get a phone call from friends or clients that I've served in the past, or I'm assigned a family to meet with that's experienced a recent death, and we sit down and we make important decisions about their loved one's care. And that could be helping write an obituary. It could be planning the date and time for a service and organizing all of the parts and pieces of that, from the kind of music that they're going to have to the location where the burial will take place, or if they're being cremated and the urn is being kept at home, helping families make all of the necessary decisions for that to come to pass the way they want it to. So
I'm sure there's a lot of common terms people throw around with, mortuaries, cemeteries, they'll say funeral homes. Mm-hmm. There's all these different terms, like, there's one like mortician, right? So maybe talk a little bit about how you are or are not some of these other common terms. Like, they mentioned sort of mortician. What else is there that people say? Funeral director, that's another one. So are you those things also?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here in the state of Utah, we're a little bit unique. Most states in the U.S., you can be licensed as a funeral service provider or funeral service professional or FSP, and you can be licensed as an embalmer, or somebody that handles kind of behind the scenes care of a deceased person's body. In the state of Utah, in order to be able to practice, you have to be licensed to do both. And so someone who's comfortable or competent providing all of that care is a mortician. So we use the term mortician here in Utah, where in a lot of other states, like where I'm originally from in the Pacific Northwest, mortician sounds kind of ancient to be saying that word. And so people say, well, he's a funeral director or a funeral service provider. Now there's different areas of specialization. We operate a crematory, for example. And so a crematory operator, that's the term we use. Other people have different names for that. We have cemeteries where people are buried, whether that's prior to cremation care or no cremation care at all. Meaning, my full body can be buried in a grave, and that's traditional burial. But I could also have a funeral and a viewing and be cremated, and my urn be buried at the cemetery, and we just call that cremation burial. So there's different options there. A cemetarian is somebody who handles those kinds of arrangements, and at Lindquist we do everything. So I'm a mortician, I'm a crematory operator, I'm a cemetarian. Now in that term mortician, again, there's funeral service provider and there's embalmer. So embalming is the art of preparing a deceased body for services and covers a wide area too. And within that, we have just embalmer, we have restorative artist. Sometimes people pass away in a traumatic way and need to have additional preparation take place so that their family can have a viewing of their loved one and say goodbye. So that's important. We also have cosmetician, so somebody that's actually doing restorative artwork in a way that allows their person that's passed away to look their very best. So different terms. One other one that I'll point out that's kind of interesting, people often use the terms funeral or memorial interchangeably. And in funeral service, we say a funeral is any type of service that we're honoring our loved one where the body is present. That's what a funeral rite is. Whether that's a sit-down service in a formal setting like a chapel that people often think of when they say funeral service, or whether it's simply meeting at the grave and having a committal service at the cemetery before the body is buried. Those are both funeral services because the body is present. A viewing, likewise, is a type of funeral service. The other term is memorial, and that just means anything that we're doing to honor our loved one that's passed away where the body is not present. And so what that means is you can have a funeral service for somebody that's going to be cremated. You can have a burial take place without any witnesses and have a memorial service for someone who's buried. Mm-hmm. And I think in our tradition across this country, people associate funeral with that thing that my parents and my grandparents did, and people associate memorial more with we're celebrating somebody's life. Mm-hmm. But accurately, it just has to do with whether the body's present or not. I do memorial celebrations of life, funeral celebrations of life, you name it. That's where we're there to do what people want.
Yeah, and then I think, saying all the terms is really interesting because it kind of goes back to what you were talking about in the beginning with the planning and preparation. It sounds like, well, obviously there's a ton of variables, right? For a loved one and how maybe what their wishes were personally, in terms of religion, their family. There's all of those things to balance. And it sounds like there's even options that you provide where maybe the family's not around or they don't want to be as involved. And it could be because of emotion. There's all kinds of factors. It sounds like there's like a huge amount of flexibility in what you can do. Really, from just what you're saying. Like I never really thought about it. But you said it now, and whenever we've met before, like with the restorative artists and cosmetology and all that, you mentioned like, yes, it's something Lindquist can do, but there's a lot of families that want to do it themselves, and it's something you ask them. That's right. So I think maybe the question I have that others would ask is, when there's so many variables and things, it can be overwhelming on top of the grief. So Chris, maybe you tell me, is that why pre-planning would be a good idea? Or maybe if there wasn't pre-planning, how would you approach it?
Now, I am a huge advocate for pre-planning for a couple of reasons. One, because it is an emotional process. And I think when people have to make decisions that are important decisions and have ramifications for their family beyond just that 2 or 3 hour arrangement, and emotions are brought to the surface, you've got all kinds of dynamics that are coming to the surface. And families are essentially dealing with a situation where they don't have a lot of control because we can't control death. It's not an area where we have control, right? So we're looking to establish control and make decisions and feel in charge of a process that by its very nature we're not in control of, okay? And when people can make those kinds of decisions beforehand, when they're not burdened with emotional loss in that moment, they're clear-headed and they can better, take the time to articulate their wishes and document all of that. That's a huge blessing, not just to me as a funeral director, because I need to walk them through this process, but it's a huge blessing to the family because it alleviates a lot of concerns and stresses, and it allows the family, instead of dealing with dynamics that aren't always healthy and grief that's not always healthy, they can actually turn to each other and take care of each other. They can address very real needs in that moment because, hey, we don't have to make this, or this decision. These have been made. Let's focus on something that brings us together and helps. Not every family has that dynamic or that problem, but many families, including my own family, have experienced that. And so being able to plan those things ahead of time, wow, peace of mind, clarity, no emotional burden. There's still going to be emotions involved, but now we can take that energy and we can direct it in a positive way. Maybe it's gathering the family together to write that biography, the obituary, and focus on that. Maybe it's more focused on the program, whether it's a memorial celebration of life or a funeral celebration of life, who's going to participate and how. And those are all good ways to focus family energy, but trying to decide, and for example, well, did mom want to be buried or cremated? We never talked about it. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? And all the ramifications of those major decisions definitely should be made in advance, in my opinion.
So it gets me into another question. You know, you're talking about the pre-planning, and it's funny because our attorney friend and just how we had this recent interaction together. I've been doing just some discussions in marketing because I'm hoping to help him with some things in his business.
Awesome.
And what's really been interesting is I talk to just normal people. I tell them kind of the circumstances and how, you know, this person passed away and there was no will, there was no trust, there's no family members. And people are like, well, what happens? It's like, well, you know, and I tell them the process, and everyone's like, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. I didn't know that. I think that can be not sad but overwhelming, where, like you said, it's like, we don't know cremation, burial. We never talked about it. And you're on top of that grief and trying to make those guesses because you're still trying to, I'd say, make that person happy after something like this has happened. So obviously that does happen in your line of work where someone's passed away, their family or loved ones, and nothing's been done. How do you start that process to start guiding them towards the funeral?
Well, like in so many other arenas, it's good to sit down with folks to help them understand that they're in a safe place to talk about whatever they need to that's important to them. And then you tell people what you're going to do for them, then you do it, and then you tell them what you did. Mm-hmm. And so I try to treat every scenario that way. I'm going to sit down and explain our process as far as what needs to take place, what my roles and duties are as your funeral director, and explain some options and give you time to think and consider what you need to do. And then at the very end, we're going to recap and we're going to talk about what we did and reminders and things like that. So it's a process that utilizes repetition. Mm-hmm. And I don't consider myself to be anything other than an educator when I'm with a family, with a client. And it involves asking questions like you're asking me questions. I want to find out what's important to the person that I'm talking to, what they know. And then based on what they're sharing with me, I'm going to guide them in the area that they're pursuing. But very important, I am not there to make decisions for people. And I tell my clients that. I say, look, I'm not here to make any decisions for you. I'm here as your guide, as your director. That's literally part of our title, funeral director. We're going to steer you the way that you are indicating, and we're going to help guide you in that process. But your decisions are yours. And I love to empower my clients from the very beginning to know that that's the case. I don't have a vested interest, for example, in what my clients choose to do. I just have the goal that 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years from that point, that they look back and feel good about the decisions that they made, that if possible, this event has brought their family closer together and that they're at peace with everything. Because that's really what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And that's really why we have the funeral rites that we do and why we take the care and time to plan in advance. It's for the peace of mind. And it's to empower us with a process that, nobody has power over death in this world. Mm-hmm. It's not something we can control.
No, well, that's great. Just this immediately came to me. I think probably the reason, there's obviously your characters able to do this, but I also want to kind of bring Lindquist into it. The ability that you guys have to relate to families on this personal level, I think really does tie into the fact that it's still a family-owned business. It's a local business, and I really want to articulate this for people who are watching. I really enjoy working with local businesses that started like maybe the people didn't go by franchise, or it's an old business, but then some conglomerate went and bought them on the back end. And we talked about this not too long ago. And I don't think many people know this, because this kind of gets into a little bit of a separate topic, but so many mortuaries, cemeteries, funeral homes, however you would say it, the prices seem so high, but it's because they've been bought out by a national company or companies. I'm trying to remember.
That's accurate.
Yeah, and it's really odd because this is happening in many other industries, and I don't think that most people even are aware of that. Like, they wouldn't even think that. Like, why would some big company that's an equivalent of, name your big company that you go through a drive-through for or go get groceries at, and you know what I'm talking about, went and bought a lot of mortuaries.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but Lindquist is still owned by the family, so maybe
And we always will be.
Yeah,
And we always will
yeah.
be. First of all, disclaimer, I am not a Lindquist myself. I'm not a family member. I'm an employee.
Yeah.
And so in this interview, I'm representing myself as far as my experiences and my understanding of things. And I don't mean to portray or represent Lindquist officially in any capacity, but here's what I can tell you and why I love working there. First of all, Lindquist started in 1867. That's longer than most banks and life insurance companies have been around. There's 5 generations of family members providing care in this local community. And I say local community, we're primarily in Weber and Davis counties here in the middle of the top of Utah. And we've got multiple locations throughout those counties. But our service area and our clientele expands well up into Idaho, all the way down into St. George on a very regular basis. And as a company with a national presence, and I'll explain that in a second, but a national reputation, we handle services for clients all over the United States. We bring people into our care from all over the world. We have clients who pass away in foreign countries all the time, and we help get them back home. Or we have people who are visiting here in Utah, because there's a lot of things that draw international people to Utah, and death can happen anywhere and any time. So we've got decades of experience helping get people home to rest where they need to be, whether that's Utah or somewhere else. And Lindquist family has been honing their expertise in this arena for a very long time. So not only as a funeral director with my own experience, I came to Utah. I'm a transplant here from the Pacific Northwest, and I had professional service experience in other states before I came here, but I've benefited from literally many decades of experience and the people that have trained me and that have taught me how Lindquist does things. So having been licensed and having worked in multiple states, and that includes Oregon, where I'm originally from, Washington, where I came from, and even working in California with some management experience there, nobody does it quite like Lindquist, in my opinion. So this is a national presence company. We've got a national reputation. People know who Lindquist is in our industry throughout the country. And it's because we've been here so long, doing what we do for so long.
I'm curious if there's maybe a couple things you can mention that are unique in your job that, say, most people wouldn't be aware of, but maybe should be, like, we're able to do this thing or that thing.
That is an interesting question, and it does open up an opportunity to talk about a few important things. First of all, we use the term, and in this interview, industry, a number of times, and that's a great term, and it applies in a lot of places. In ours, what we do is so sensitive, and I know there's a death care industry or funeral industry that people talk about out there. I prefer to think of it as a field of care. Mm-hmm. And just like the medical industry is really all about care. The people that are doing the work are there because they care. They love what they do. They love serving people, and they're there to make a difference. That brings up another question. People say, well, how do you like your job? I say, well, I haven't had a job in a long time. Well, what do you mean? And I say, well, I feel called to what I do. This is more of a calling than a job. a job is something you go to because you have to. I go to work because I'm excited to go help. And so field of care, it's calling, it's not a job. And in watching the videos that you have already posted, some of the interviews you've done, you used a term with one gentleman called the silver tsunami. You talked about what's happening as the population ages, right? Boy, are we looking for people to be in our field of care to help out because of what's coming down the road. And that is the baby boomers touching every industry that they become a part of, whether it's papers or cars or 401ks. More people are going to pass away 20 years in this nation than cumulatively have passed away in the last century. And there's not an industry or field of care out there really in our nation that's very well prepared for that. Whether it's the medical industry, my wife is a medical professional, whether it's real estate, as you discussed previously, or whether it's final care. And so we are looking for good people. Now, your question was, well, what can you tell us about your job that we haven't already talked about? And here's what I'd like to say. This is unique in terms of the field of care in that not only do we have to be able to handle obituaries, but we have to understand spatial design. We're putting flowers out, making things look good. We have a medical background because we're dealing with medical things in terms of preparing the body. A little bit of chemistry goes into that. Some math that we need to, be aware of. There's accounting for our business practices. There's psychology and sociology involved, being able to properly address the needs of clients that we're serving. A lot of times, funeral service professionals are asked to step up and almost take the role of clergy with families that they're helping that don't either have a background or don't have a relationship with someone, and they're looking at this critical point in their life for somebody who can step in and say, take you by the hand and walk you through what this experience is and help you and guide you. So we're not there to the place of the officiant that's available, but sometimes we have clients who don't have anybody to officiate or help them, and they still want to have a spiritual experience with death. And so we're there to do that. So whatever experience people have in another career, and I'll tell you, I've got a lot of friends that come to the funeral service who've worked in law enforcement or maybe in a clerical capacity, clergy capacity, maybe they're a retired social worker, or maybe they came out of nursing or the hospice care field of work, and they're looking for more to do, more to add experience. And I'll tell you, final care needs people. This country is looking for people who care to step up and learn about and help in this endeavor. Neighbor, if it has to do with final care, we do it. One day I might be going and bringing someone that's passed away back to the mortuary, be sitting down in conference counseling with a group of people trying to help them make difficult decisions. I might be officiating a funeral for somebody that doesn't have a pastor or a chaplain or somebody that I might be designing a grave marker and helping create a piece of lasting memorialization that this family is going to go back and look at and have a place of peace to gather at for days. And it's artwork. Any skill in any of those areas, bring it to the table. Let us add to that and let us help you become a problem solver in this coming silver tsunami that's an experience.
Yeah, I was at a meeting today, and they said they said in the next 5 years, the number of people who reach 85 is more than double, quite triple more in that years. Maybe you feel comfortable sharing what are a couple of challenges variant in the job that you would feel comfortable sharing or might benefit people when they go through this process.
Wow. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is little ones. Probably the hardest part of this career is confronting death when it seems unnatural or out of sync with what people expect. We imagine ourselves growing old, having a family, and dying in our old age because that's normal, right? That's natural. And yet death can come at any time. And I remember early on in my funeral service career as a young parent and helping take care of little ones that passed away, whether it was an accident or natural causes of some kind. And I'd wake up and go in and check the crib and make sure that my children were still breathing. At some point, I had to let go of that and just trust that whether my kids are okay or they pass away, they're in God's hands. I'm here to help. It is not uncommon for me to meet with 1 or 2 families a month that lost a little one, and that's always hard. People say things like, "Oh, you must get used to it. You must get used to being a funeral director." We never get used to death. We're around it all the time, and we're around grieving people all the time. But what we're doing here, regardless of whether people have a faith background or don't, what we're doing here is sacred. We elevate final care that we give. The body is a marvelous, miraculous, incredible thing, but our identity lives on in one way or another, whether it's in the memories of those that die or whether it's in a real spiritual way. It matters. And I think if people get too accustomed to that and it no longer hurts their heart, then they might want to consider another industry, and maybe this isn't right for them. But there are days when I go home and cry, "Oh my," we hold it together, and we're there to interact with people in a certain way and keep things professional because they need that strength. We also are there with people and let them know that what they're experiencing is okay. And although I don't understand what my plans are exactly, it's certainly empathize. Most of what I know as a funeral director that matters is what I've gained through personal experience with deep personal. So whether that's losing a little one, parent, a friend, in an accident, suicide. I lost some of my fellow soldiers in Iraq. We lose people. And then there's a journey we take to figure out how we grow these difficult experiences and experience what it is that we're gaining. And what we have is often defined by the age-old saying, you don't really truly appreciate what you have going on. I think it's a shocking experience for a lot of people when they first deal with deep personal loss. But there's some beautiful dichotomy there. Life is precious. We try not to take a day for granted. We celebrate it with them. We honor those that are in our care. I personally am a believer in God, and I have deep personal faith. I think I'm accountable to this person, not just the family that I'm helping, not just people taking care of and shepherding in this way, but I'm accountable to this individual. Catch up to the answer to them. And I certainly hope that at some point my body is cared for by somebody think in a similar way. Whether people are a religious persuasion or aren't, the values, the ethics, the ideals that we're talking about are life is worth celebrating. We should respect the sanctity of life. We should honor those who come before and laid the foundation for everything that we enjoy. Likewise, all of our freedoms and liberties, they're ours, our responsibilities. And we experience and appreciate and enjoy these freedoms and liberties on the shoulders of giants, men and women throughout the world who sacrificed and lived their entire lives to build a foundation for better tomorrow for their children. That's what we inherited. Don't we owe it to them to do the same for our children? And we can't really truly become who we're meant to be in this world. We're not looking as well as looking. There's a better a better place to do that than in terms of my health care. That's when it all gets real. It certainly does for me.
I appreciate you in this sincerely, and your openness. Rare to find in general, but I imagine that, Tactic here is very important. Be stoic, you can, professional, lack outward. So I appreciate that and respect that a lot. I want to say it. I know our time's starting to wind down. We've covered a lot of ground. I think really, I probably have another open-ended question.
I'll do my best.
Because, we only got a couple of minutes. Is there anything else you wanted to share about your job or Lindquist before we wrap up?
Well, I'll say for those that are navigating this area, maybe considering pre-planning for themselves or have recently experienced a death, that there's a couple things that they should know. First of all, mortuaries generally are places where you're going to be well taken care of wherever you go. The people that are out there to help in this field of care mean well, they've been well trained, they're there to help. So don't be afraid to go and visit the mortuary or the funeral home in your area. Get to know those people, talk to, get their material. They should be providing you with what we call a general price list. The Federal Trade Commission actually regulates our industry, requires that we present certain types of information. Every mortuary is going to have that. So get acquainted with the information, get acquainted with the people in your area that are there to help you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We're here to answer questions. We're here to educate. We're here to lend a hand, and we care about the results. If you are in our area or interested in advanced planning, Mr. John E. Lindquist started an insurance company about 40 years ago called Great Western Insurance Company. And we have mortuaries that are our clients and families in 48 states we write with to help. So I personally have helped clients the West Coast, California, from Washington, further east, as far back east as Michigan and Missouri with their plan. I'm a Utah licensed insurance agent, so we do that planning here in Utah. But I have clients all over the nation that I know. So I would encourage people to consider getting the information, know your funeral director, and if you want to work with funeral service professionals with the kind of experience that we have, give us a call. Let Lindquist help. We do that planning.
And what would you say is the best way to look up Lindquist or how to contact you?
Well, I don't mind giving out my work cell phone number.
Well,
I have clients all over. So if you do have questions and want to follow up with me, you can reach me on my work cell phone at 801-719-544. We're headquartered in Ogden, Utah, and our presence is a national one, as is our reputation. It's important to you, to us. Don't hesitate to reach out and give us a call. We're here to help. Stephen, questions?
No, it's been great.
Yeah. And I want to reciprocate a little bit what you said earlier in my interactions with you. I know that you're somebody who really, really cares people he serves. The professional real estate areas where you help clients, I feel that what I learned of you, that you elevate that your desire is really, truly to make the best possible experience for your client. And like you said, it's hard to find, but only if you're not looking. You're a good person. I'm a good person. I think there's good people out there. The important thing is that we get out and engage with each other, professionals, that we're networking. Thank you for all that you do.
I appreciate the compliment. I think, just as we wrap up, I mean, that's pretty much the end, but just to add one more tag, like, it's just another example of things I've been talking about just so much lately with people. It's just, please get the will, please have assets, please get a trust, please have, provide the term life insurance at the very least. It's very affordable, and you really should consider the pre-planning because it's life and it's going to happen. And I'd rather people have a plan so that again their loved ones that are here are having to be burdened with that stress on top of it. It's a lot. It really is a lot. I don't think a lot of people understand that. You and I, you haven't had to experience personally, but I appreciate you coming here. And hopefully this format works. We'll see how it goes. Thanks.
And to our friends out there who joined us or who watched us down the road, thank you. And please check out Steven's other videos. He's got some wonderful interviews that he's done, and I've really enjoyed learning from those quite a lot. Great opportunity. See you.